ANC eThekwini Regional Conference is underway after delays at the ICC in Durban. The conference is part of the build-up to the party's National Elective Conference in December. Corruption-accused former Mayor Zandile Gumede and eThekwini Municipal Speaker Tabane Nyawose are up for the position of chairperson in the region. For the latest now, we're joined live by our senior reporter Dasen Thathiah. Dasen, thanks for stepping out to give us this update. Now, both factions of the ANC are under one roof today, or most of today already. What's the mood like at the moment?
Well, I can describe that mood in lots of ways, Marcel. On the one hand, it's a lot calmer now, but there's also a lot of anxiety, uncertainty. You know, I'll just show you what it looks like behind me now in the foyer area. This is where delegates are waiting. There's currently a head count that is underway. In fact, a redo of that head count, because this precedes the adoption of credentials. That's a very important part of this process, effectively where it determines who's meant to be here, who's not meant to be here, who should be voting and who shouldn't. And this is a very, very rigorous part of that process. So physically ensuring that a person by this name is here and is eligible to vote. So as that happens, you have most of the delegates waiting out into the foyer. They are then called by ward and they are brought in, and where that verification is done. But even the adoption of credentials, Marcel, that's not necessarily a process that is going to be handled easily. I'm just trying to see what the commotion is here. There seems to be some security that have been brought in. I'm just going to ask my colleague to come off the tripod so that we can follow, just to establish what's happening. Just taking you a little bit closer here, Marcel. Let's go around to the side here. Sorry to disturb you. Yes, ma'am. We're live on eNCA. Tell me, what is the disturbance that just took place here?
No, some of the comrades want to observe the process because correctly or wrongly, they are guarding the other factions that were not putting other people on the list. So you see, you can see the list. You check the person who has signed, and you verify it by checking him, by checking his ID and his tag. Then you check him to go in.
So others want to observe that process as it takes place.
They want to observe that process, which is beyond their scope. This is a process for the administration. The process for observing will only happen when you go for the voting process inside. Then once you are qualifying as a candidate, then you will be eligible to bring in a person to observe for you.
How are you going to manage this process now? I'm saying, how are you going to manage it, because you still need to get through quite a number of delegates here.
No, what can you? Look for yourself.
Oh, you've completed it?
Yeah, we've completed here. We've completed here. The only people outside here now are non-voting delegates.
Okay.
All the voting delegates are inside.
So the process of adopting the credentials should start?
Yeah, it should start now.
Okay, I'll let you get to that. Thank you so much, Nhlakanipho.
Sure.
Ntombela there, thank you for the update. I'm just going to step aside here myself. I think you've heard there. That's been some of the mood. I guess that answers your question about what the mood was like. Earlier, there were also allegations that had come from the Zandile Gumede faction, and her supporters, people like Ntando Kuzwayo, were alleging that those lists that were submitted, which form part of the delay in leading up to the conference, was actually not the final list that was taken, was not the list that was submitted by the Youth League. Let's listen to his interview that we did with him earlier.
There's a number of things that have happened here. One, the ANC has meddled with this conference in that it interfered with how the Youth League should delegate people who should participate in this conference. That is very wrong. It's unconstitutional. The ANC Youth League participates here as a constitutional requirement, and they have voting status. Now, according to the constitution, the ANC Youth League and the ANC Women's League have 10% of the conference ceiling. In other words, what should happen? The conference should say, or rather the planning team should say, conference ceiling is 500. Therefore, as an example, therefore 50 is the 10%, split into two, 25-25. That's how it's been happening in all other regions, except for eThekwini. Now that it's eThekwini, there's a problem. They want this and that and this and that. Now, the RTT, the interim structure of the Youth League, set and decided on a list that should be used as delegates. But the ANC rejected that list and forced them to do that list in a particular way. That is interference.
Now, the party's national spokesperson, Pule Mabe, has dismissed those claims of irregularities. Dasen, tell us more.
He has. And Marcel, while I'm doing that, I'm also going to tell you that I'm just keeping one eye on what's happening behind me here. You heard that there was some discontentment over observing how these lists were verified. So that's that gathering behind me now. But Pule Mabe basically saying to us earlier that it's too early to even talk about that there are no irregularities, and particularly that no one should speak on behalf of any other entity. So, for example, in this instance, someone like Ntando Kuzwayo can't speak on behalf of the Youth League because he's not part of that. Let's listen to part of that interview we did with Pule Mabe earlier.
Well, we are confident that leagues, including the task team of the ANC Youth League in the region, will be able to then address that. What has happened, an intervention I'm aware of on the ANC Youth League, was to make sure that both the convener of the ANC Youth League regional task team as well as the coordinator would then have participated, and including with all other structures, would then have co-signed their lists. So now, when you are not a member of the Youth League and then express unhappiness about the process of the Youth League, then it becomes suspect. Because at least from what we know, on good note, is that both the coordinator and the convener of the Youth League would have participated in that process of then ratifying who duly represent the ANC Youth League in this conference. So there is no challenge. We should avoid depositing what looks like challenges on structures or imposing challenges on those structures when those structures have not said so. I can tell you now, even ourselves at the national level, together with the leadership of the ANC Youth League here in the province and even at national level, had engaged on matters that relate to issues of the Youth League, effectively all of the leagues. And we have ensured that the final determination that gets to be made is one that brings members of the, because members of the ANC Youth League are not just here as voting kettles. They are also here to make sure that they make inputs necessary to change the living conditions of young people in eThekwini. They canvass for policy shifts, or they canvass for policy formulations in eThekwini that is responsive to the plight of the many young people who are either looking for opportunities, looking to educate themselves, and all of that. So we should not look only at the Youth League as though they are just here to vote. They are here to then say, what kind of renewal are we expected to submit to as young people? So with the interaction we've had, it's quite, we are quite comfortable that young people who are here representing the Youth League, and so are the women who are here representing the ANC Women's League, and so are the members of the ANC who are here representing their respective branches, are here with a common wish, a common goal, to make sure that the renewal program finds expression in the eThekwini region, and we wish them well. We've been happy with how they conducted themselves.
Now, Dasen, the biggest talking point in the lead up to this conference was, of course, the infamous, I suppose you could call it, a controversial ANC step-aside rule. One of the main candidates had something to say about it. What did he say to you?
He did, Marcel. In fact, I'm just going to step aside while I let you look at what's going on behind me at this point until we get to that. But basically, that has been a very contentious issue, right? On the one hand, you've got the the supporters of Sandile Gumede, knowing fully well that if she were in fact to take this position, that she wouldn't actually get to serve in it because she would have to step aside from that position, effectively meaning that the rest of the leadership would have to take over, but her as the key person here, as the chair of the region, would not be able to serve. So they're fully aware of that, and they know that that's what would happen. But now that, and to some, sounds nonsensical, and even the province here had raised this with the NEC. They say that it is something that needs to be addressed, especially when it comes to conferences like this one. They say that it is something that they are working on. We've also spoken to NEC members here. We had David Masondo earlier commenting on this directly, and he says that yes, it is something that they do need to address, but what that effectively means is that until it gets to that point where it is addressed and a resolution is taken on it, a further resolution, it means that that is the status quo, and that's how it will work. Someone who is not affected by that currently is Thabani Nyawose, obviously, who is the other contender. He commented on this to us. He says that, in theory, he has no objections to Sandile Gumede running for this position. It's just how it plays out after that that he's worried about. So let's listen to what he had to say.
My understanding of the step-aside rule, if you are nominated by branches, you have a right to accept nomination and to stand. You have a right also to be elected into a conference. But if you win the conference, you are expected to step aside till all your matters are concluded in a court of law. Then you will assume your responsibility as the leader of the ANC. That is my understanding. Therefore, I don't expect Comrade Sandile Gumede to decline the nomination. I expect her to accept the nomination and be elected to a conference. If she wins, then she will be expected to step aside as the instruction from conference and from the NEC. That is my understanding or my interpretation.
Now, Dasen, before we say goodbye to you this evening, is there any update on the little kerfuffle that's been going on behind you?
Well, it seems like there are going to be a few more discussions to be had outside here to try and convince the delegates that are outside. So let me just explain this to you, Marcel. The delegates that you're seeing standing around here, those that had approached the table a little while ago, those are the non-voting delegates. Those that are voting are already inside behind closed doors. That is a closed process that will be taking place. So the issue here now is, as Nhlanganipho Ntombela had pointed out, is that the non-voting delegates wanted to almost serve as observers to ensure that the list of people that was going in was accurate, that it was verified, and those were in fact the people. This is what you're seeing right now, and this is a matter that still needs to be resolved. But it seems like it's happening simultaneously while the closed process takes place. One thing I must also tell you, Marcel, is that inside, during the adoption of credentials, that issue that was raised earlier by Ntando Kuzwayo is something that is expected to come up, and hopefully it will be something that will be ironed out here without any further disruptions. I did ask him directly if the conference would proceed if that was not sorted out, and he said, well, you know what, all they want is the conference to run smoothly to ensure it happens, but he can't guarantee what happens after the process of adoption of credentials.
Well, lots of looks of confusion, lots of pointing, lots of firm words. It sounds like a good old ANC conference, doesn't it? That's our senior reporter, Dasen Thathiah. Never a dull moment at those conferences.